Good morning, and thank you for joining us on this SAG-AFTRA live stream on YouTube. To stay informed about all of our live stream and video events, we invite you to subscribe to the SAG-AFTRA channel. You can go ahead and do that right now. Today, we present SAG-AFTRA and AFL-CIO's third annual Labor Innovation and Technology Summit, held virtually for the first time. We'll be pausing throughout as we have with us Nicole Pancino, Justin Maurer, and Sharon Pierre-Louis to translate the programming into American Sign Language. Nicole, Justin, and Sharon will be switching off throughout today's events. The presentations will begin momentarily. We have many different session formats today, and we'll announce at the top of each session if we'll be taking questions from the audience. If you have questions that you'd like to direct to today's guests, please submit them at sagaftra.org/summit questions. That's a web address. You can go to sagaftra.org/summit questions and send us your question. We will get to as many questions as we can, but we have a day packed with programming, so the Q&A sessions might be a little short. Send us your questions though, and we'll get to them either during sessions or after. We'll be monitoring that box, and we'll pick up all questions as time permits. As a reminder, today's program is being recorded, and you can watch the replay right here on SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel, along with more great content. Please note that SAG-AFTRA does not endorse any platform, product, or service. The program today is meant for informational and educational purposes only, and what you're viewing does not constitute an endorsement by the union. We also invite you to follow the conversation on social media using our official hashtags, hashtag SAG-AFTRA, hashtag AFL-CIO, and hashtag 2021 Labor Tech Summit. Now, please give a warm welcome to today's host, SAG-AFTRA President, Gabrielle Carteris.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I hope you're doing well. Yes, welcome to the third annual Labor Innovation and Technology Summit. I can't believe it. The third one. I'm very happy to have you all here virtually. It's so apropos since we're coming through this Zoom today. First, I just want to kick off this day by thanking our partners at the AFL-CIO. Thank them for joining us and bringing this incredibly important conversation about labor and technology to you, wherever you may be watching around the world. How incredible is that? So that would be AFL-CIO President Richard Trumka and AFL-CIO Secretary Treasurer Liz Schuler, both incredibly inspirational leaders. I am so grateful for their ongoing partnership. And today, not just for today, but every day, truly, truly inspirational. I also want to thank all of the people who worked so hard to put together this exciting and monumental program, what I'm sure is going to be, in fact, I know will be a stimulating day of discussion. You know, when we gathered last year in person, that's right, in person, who would have thought we'd be here today, during CES 2020, the Consumer Electronics Show, I opened our discussions with a global prediction by the World Economic Forum that 45 million jobs would be lost due to automation. And at that time, 45 million jobs, that was staggering. Well, here we are just over a year later, battling a global pandemic that has actually decimated job opportunities at an inconceivable rate. Little did we know that the COVID pandemic would disrupt lives around the world in unthinkable ways, and as a result, accelerate automation. So to set the frame for today's discussion, I want us to all consider just 3 stunning new predictions from a recent World Economic Forum global survey of business leaders. 1, 80% of those surveyed reported that they are accelerating the automation of their work processes and expanding their use of remote work. We're seeing it here. 2, a significant 50% are also set to accelerate the automation of jobs in their companies. And 3, thanks to automation, more than 1/4 of employers expect to temporarily reduce their workforce, and 1 in 5 expect to do so permanently. So, where does that leave workers? The International Labor Organization, ILO, estimated by the end of the second quarter of 2020, 195 million workers will have been displaced as jobs are transformed by the pandemic, which is even happening at a greater speed than anticipated. So I just want you to hear that number, 195 million workers. So that's devastating and it feels dire. But we also need to bring into the conversation another truth, a very important truth. Technology will also create new jobs. While 85 million jobs may be displaced by a shift in the division of labor between humans and machines, by 2025, 97 million new jobs could emerge in 15 different industries, and we need to adapt and be prepared. We need to be at the table. At the end of the day, we should also hold fast to the principle that people matter, that technology is meant to serve humanity. It is not meant to surpass it. And that is the underlying message today. The role of unions is not to fight technology, but to be a part of the conversation at the onset so that we can help lead and shape the future of our work. We need to be empowered. And as technology evolves, we have to make sure that humans are treated fairly and that they can make a decent living and can do their jobs with both dignity and respect. The issue of massive worker displacement raises significant national policy questions that go to the heart of creating a just and caring society. First of all, what kind of safety net needs to be in place to assist people who are displaced from a job because of technology, even if it's temporary? And how do we fund it? And how do we fund broad unemployment benefits and job retaining programs? So I observed the tension between technology and workers' rights with my own eyes. Actually, last year, one of the big attractions at CES was a fully automated restaurant operated entirely by robots. That's right, entirely, from food preparation to serving customers. So to me, it was actually astonishing to watch it. It was interesting, and in some ways it was troubling. Yes, they appeared to be great efficiencies in the operation that could lead to a faster customer service experience. But one has to ask, isn't the warmth and humanity of the people who work in a restaurant also part of the customer experience? So after a year in quarantine, I think that we have actually seen the answer. We've learned the importance and value that should be placed on human connection, because I know I miss it. In fact, I'm sure that we all miss it. So I thought of the thousands of people who depend on having their jobs at restaurants to make a living, from the line cooks to the servers to the cleaners. And if we lose them due to technology, the question is, where will they go? How will they make a living, especially those with skills that may not be easily transferable? So today, I think especially about last year's tour of that exhibit, because the pandemic has in fact hit the restaurant industry incredibly, incredibly hard. I mean, the most recent data on employment from the Bureau of Labor Statistics tells us that just in December alone, 372,000 jobs were lost in the restaurant industry. That's 372,000 jobs, which put the entire industry's employment level nearly 20% below where it was as the pandemic erupted. Now, I can't help but think of how many people lost their livelihood in such a short time. Unimaginable. And how devastating a shift to robots would be. It would be it would greatly compound the loss for so many people. Within the entertainment industry, the technology versus humanity tension is right in your face. Two significant trends paint the picture. Now, I don't know where I would be, and I'm sure you would agree with me, without Netflix, Hulu, other streaming services. Yet the sudden and extreme pivot to streaming during this pandemic poses an existential threat to performers' ability to make a living. I emphasize not because of the technology itself, but primarily because of the way large corporations are exploiting technology to either change or blatantly ignore the fundamental pillars that have built over decades of collective bargaining to ensure that workers shared in the financial bounty that they create. To ensure that they shared, I want you to hear that, in the financial bounty that they create. The second is the continued dramatic growth in deepfakes. Now, if you're tempted to write this off as a problem with limited reach, consider the potential implications of a technology that can take, store, and manipulate an actor's data, or politicians for that matter. For actors, that means putting their image, movements, personality into scenes they had nothing to do with, and then making that data a reusable commodity, even without an actor's consent. Imagine. But deep fakes are not only a challenge for performers, they are actually a real threat to our democracy. Because as we look at the current political terrain, it's not hard to see how the manipulation of information and the falsification of truth can actually ignite hate and division. It can endanger lives and tear apart communities and even split families. Lawmakers across the country are slowly coming to see the seriousness of this issue. And to be fair, some have been quicker to take action than others. So the work we're doing as a union is vitally, vitally important. The work that we do as unions across the globe, vitally, vitally important. Throughout modern history, unions have been on the forefront and in the front line of protecting workers. That's been the case through every new technological advance dating back to the invention of radio, the advent of the moving picture, the rise of television, the creation of the VCR, the explosion of CDs and DVDs, and now streaming. That is the landscape and the challenge before us, and one which I think will be finely illuminated throughout this summit today. And that's what makes me excited. To shape this conversation, we have an incredibly outstanding lineup of experts and visionaries who will share their insights with us. And as I mentioned, we're going to dig deep into how the growth of movie streaming is challenging existing power and bargaining relationships in the industry. We're going to take a deep dive into the world of volumetric video technology. Exciting, mind-blowing. We're going to also have an update on deepfake legislative efforts, as well as a report on game-changing technologies coming out of CES 2021, not just within our industry, but for working Americans as a whole. And later, during our afternoon sessions, we're going to pull back the camera to grapple with the big picture facing organized labor as it meets the challenges of adapting to the impact of the COVID pandemic. And we're going to take a look at the state of organizing happening with the tech industry giants like Google and Amazon. Again, I'm also incredibly excited for my one-on-one conversation with Tristan Harris from the Center for Humane Technology and our discussion about SAG-AFTRA's new influencer agreement that's been all the buzz in the news as of late. We have an incredible program for you. I hope that you're going to stick with us for the entire day. Some of what you hear will be exciting, and some of it will actually may be disconcerting. And when you're at that most uncomfortable place, that's really, I think, how you know you are in a conversation that you need to be a part of. Now, you're in for a treat. So it is my great pleasure to introduce a person with whom I work with daily with pride to protect the interests of our members, SAG-AFTRA's National Executive Director, David White. Hi, David.
Thank you, Gabrielle.